Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. Thank you for joining us for what is the first conversation in Munich Fabric Start's 30-year anniversary programme. For those I haven't met, I'm Sophia Strazzanti, the founder and CEO of Future Fashion Assembly. We're a fashion innovation digital platform where we help fashion businesses navigate change through practical technology, AI and sustainability solutions. So you can operate more efficiently while creating positive impact across your value chain. And we're delighted to be partnering with Munich Fabric Start on today's discussion, because for 3 decades, Munich Fabric Start has been more than a sourcing event. It's been a place where relationships have been built, ideas exchanged, and businesses launched and partnerships formed. And in many ways, this has reflected the evolution of the textile industry itself. So this anniversary is not simply a moment to look back and celebrate. Of course, we want to celebrate what has been achieved, but it's also an opportunity to ask what the industry has learned, what can no longer be ignored, and what textile leaders need to prepare for next. Because while the foundations of our industry remain remarkably strong, the operating environment around us has changed dramatically. We're navigating rising costs, increasing compliance requirements, geopolitical uncertainty, material challenges, changing consumer expectations, and the rapid advances in technology and AI. So the challenge today is not a lack of awareness. We're all very aware of these pressures, but it's rather understanding how we can respond. How can we come together? How do brands, suppliers, manufacturers, and innovations work together effectively? And this is what this conversation is here about. It's also about how do we merge the craft and heritage of our industry with the evolving technologies that are amongst us. So before we begin, a quick note on today's format. The discussion will run for around 35 minutes, followed by a 10-minute Q&A. So feel free to share any questions, your thoughts, your observations into the chat throughout, and I'll be monitoring those. And then we'll try and bring them as much into the conversation towards the end of the webinar. Importantly, this conversation will continue in July in Munich at Munich Fabric Start, where many of these themes will be explored through the exhibitor stories, stage discussions, and peer roundtables. So let's get started. Today, we're joined by an astounding panel. Very privileged to introduce them now. We have Chelsea Franklin, who is an award-winning designer, founder of Studio Chelsea Franklin and former head of innovation at Pangaea, bringing deep expertise in applied material innovation, product development, and responsible design. Welcome, Chelsea.
Thank you for having me, Sophia.
Next, we have Beyza Baykam. She's the founder and CEO of Bytech Technologies and the curator of Handmade Stone. It's a practical manufacturing innovation helping transform denim finishing through a much more resource-efficient production method. Welcome, Beyza.
Thank you, Sophia.
We're also joined by Lisa McCalladon. Sorry, Lisa. She's the creative and sustainability director of Batia Group, bringing extensive experience across sourcing, supply chain transformation, but also importantly, sustainability implementation and future-proofing sourcing businesses. So welcome, Lisa.
Thanks, Sophia. Excited to be part of the conversation.
Thank you. And last but no means least, guiding today's discussion is Muchinetta Ten-Napal. She's the founder and CEO of Shape Innovate, working at the intersection of fashion, innovation, sustainability, and policy. She's also the curator of the education stage program at Munich Fabric Start, and also in July. So thank you for hosting this conversation, Muchinetta.
Thank you, Sophia. That was a wonderful introduction. I couldn't have done it better myself.
Thank you. I'll leave it to you. Hand over to you.
Thank you. I think Sophia really kind of covered in depth what it is that we're about today. So it's so important that I give these ladies an opportunity to share their knowledge. So I will not be adding anything more to that. I'll just jump straight into the first question. The first question, I want it to be an icebreaker, ladies. I want it to be you kind of sharing your knowledge with us. So as the industry has changed dramatically over the past few decades, but not every change has been an improvement. So what's one lesson or practice from the past that you think we should hold on to as we build the future of textiles? So looking back, we're going to start first in the past before we move into the future. Anyone wants to go first?
I can go first if you like.
Yes,
I
please,
think,
Lisa.
especially, in the textile industry over the last, 30 years, a lot of value was placed on relationships and that genuine human connection. And I think that's definitely something that we need to hold on to. At the moment, we live in a world where technology, data, digital tools really, generate how we operate in the industry. But when I look back over, my 20 plus years in the industry, some of the most meaningful business decisions that I've made have actually been made through those strong relationships that have been built on trust, shared challenges, face-to-face conversations, or even just, shared values and shared interests. So I think where we are becoming increasingly more complex and how we operate and introducing, AI and more digital tools, I think it's really important that we hark back to actually that human connection is really, really key to how we drive forward in our industry and how we do business.
I think I completely agree with that. And I think when it comes to technology, there's a lot of fear that we're going to lose that human connection. But I kind of feel like that's what will make us actually be quite successful. What are your thoughts, Chelsea, on that?
I actually would love to build on this idea of moving towards a more complex world. I think we had more simplicity 30 years ago, and from more of a product and material angle, I look at how we've increased how many mixed compositions we have within our fiber base or textile base now. And 30 years ago, you had a cotton t-shirt. This is to exercise in, and now you have a very complex synthetic product that has many different components, which obviously affects the ability to recycle that product at the end of its life. And I think there's a simplicity in how things were in the past that I would like to see us come back to in a very kind of practical, tangible way.
Beza, anything you'd like to add?
Sure. What I've seen in the textile industry in this short amount of time that I've been in it is that there's so much collaboration going on, and there's more collaboration rather than competition. And I really like that. And that's why there's a lot of innovations, and there's a fast amount of implementation as opposed to any other industry. Thanks to all of these collaborations, it goes back to what Lisa said about human connection as well. And that's definitely what I think we should hold on to as we build the future of textiles.
I think it's a very positive beginning. I quite like that. Lisa, I'm going to ask you a question directly now. You spent years working across global supply chains. Looking back, what do you think has changed the most dramatically in the relationship between brands, suppliers, and sourcing partners? And what has remained surprisingly constant?
I think probably the biggest shift, from when I first joined the industry was we worked in a relatively predictable sourcing environment, where you would have your key suppliers that you would work with season after season. You would do X amount out of China, X amount out of Portugal, whatever the mix would be. And so there was a level of sort of predictability of where you were going to place your products and how it was going to be sourced. I think where we are now, especially in this sort of global environment, we're so affected by everything that's going on, including geopolitical events, conflicts, trade policy, Trump. I mean, I think he has to be mentioned in this conversation as well. Some of his decisions have affected our industry overnight, oil prices affecting polyester, even, supply chain routes, etc. And so I think that's probably been the biggest shift that I've seen, is actually brand suppliers and textile mills and innovators actually have to be incredibly agile these days. You have to be able to pivot really quickly in order to counteract whatever's going on globally. So, all of these changes are especially when we're looking at things like legislation and policy, all of these things are amazing at driving change, but actually they're a big impact to businesses as well. And it creates a significant cost to businesses and their operational procedures. So, which then obviously gets passed on to the value chain. Ultimately, someone has to pay the price along the way, and often it seems to be the value chain. So, I think what hasn't changed is, what I was saying in the first question. It's that need for stronger relationships and longer term partnerships and commitments and strategies.
Would you also say, just to kind of go on to that question, that COVID was something that really pushed the industry to learn how to pivot, because we got very comfortable, didn't we? So when COVID came along, and it really taught brands that they need to find other revenue streams, they need to figure it out, think on their feet. So would you say that also played a role as well?
Absolutely. I think any sort of forced change evokes a bit of creativity. And in our industry, we're full of creatives, whether it's, when we talk about design, it's not only designers who are designing, we're designing systems, and, changing those systems are really key to being able to pivot. I think it's also important to note that COVID has a lot to say for some of the challenges we face in the industry today. So, having worked in supply chain for many, many years, what I've found is actually a lot of buyers who have gone into buyer, senior buyer, buyer manager positions, some of them haven't stepped inside factories. And so they've got the seniority of the title and the ego and all of that to make the decisions, but actually they don't understand who it is they're working with and what it takes to produce apparel.
Do you know what stood out to me, Lisa, is the way you said forced change. I think change within the fashion industry, unfortunately, has to be forced in order to move. So when you're talking about buyers that haven't stepped out of the office, I think the laws that are coming into play, where they have to understand their supply chain, that will force them to actually know, to step into a factory and be able to be held accountable for what goes on there, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, this is going to be with all the legislation coming, this is going to be the decade of change. We've not seen this kind of legislation in our, in any lifetime in our industry. And so it's no longer going to be a nice to have. It's going to be a must have.
So sticking on that topic of pressure, this is a question for all of you. What pressure do you believe is having the biggest impact on the textile businesses right now? I know we talked about policy, obviously mentioned COVID, which was something that really pushed brands to the edge. What other pressures have you encountered or seen or experienced that you feel are having a really big impact on the textile industry currently?
I'll jump in here, Muchinetta. I think what you're seeing from a consumer side is a new pressure in terms of the consumer has become so much more educated around the reality of the composition of a lot of their apparel. And I think they're asking a lot more questions than they ever had. I think we saw this in the beauty industry when consumers became more conscious of the difference between certain percentages of retinol, for example, and how that would affect them within kind of active ingredients. And all of a sudden, this quite savvy consumer is asking questions around the composition of our materials within our product. And this, I think, is a growing pressure of really being able to both communicate from a brand and kind of at a point of sale to a consumer what it is that they're buying into, how that product will perform for them. But equally, it's really asking, in terms of some of the challenges within synthetic fibers and the chemistry that has been used within the industry, how can we move to more positive alternatives and allow that pressure to push us forward to a direction we really want to be in?
So the pressure be more about kind of creating opportunity rather than breaking it down. I mean, Beza, you work more on the technology side. There must be a lot of pressure to have an innovation that solves all these problems. Would you say that is the case currently?
Yeah, no, for sure. But like what I actually wanted to touch upon was that, there's always this idea of you should go and get your products produced at wherever they're doing it for the cheapest. So there's always the, migration of brands from country A to country B. Okay, oh my God, like country C is doing it for cheaper. Let's go and get it produced there. And then there has always been a trend of brands manufacturing in different countries in such a short period of time, switching and everything. But then lately, what I realized, the feedback that I'm getting from my own customers is that their old customers who left them for, margins are coming back because of lack of quality consistency in the, in these new places and everything. So there has been a cost pressure for a long time, but now there's a quality pressure, in my opinion, and consistency as well.
Sounds like the prodigal son returns. So I kind of like that. I think it is good for, to shake up the industry, for them to understand that quality does play a really big role in whether people actually buy products today. Because like you said, Chelsea, they know a lot more now. So they are able to ask those hard questions. Sticking with you, Chelsea, from materials and innovation perspective and drawing on your work at Pangaea, we've seen an enormous growth in synthetic fibers over the past 3 decades. So as brands rethink performance, sustainability, and consumer expectations, what material shifts do you believe will define the next decade?
I love this question, Vishneta, because I think I'll actually answer it in 2 parts. So one is very much from the product lens and how the product dictates a lot of the material decisions. I think what we've seen historically is this big separation between performance sportswear and fashion or lifestyle apparel. And these always have been 2 different camps, and the approach to developing those products and technologies have been quite separate. But for the first time, I think we're starting to see a much more integrated, a much more kind of recognition that it needs to reconcile with your wardrobe a little bit more. Your activewear is more a part of your daily life. And therefore, I think low impact exercise versus a very high impact exercise is also becoming much more a part of post-COVID kind of culture. And I think this is dictating a kind of macro trend around natural performance and looking at materials that can actually support low impact kind of performance in your daily life. I think the other side of this is very much around textile recycling. So you talk about the growth of synthetics. And I think what we've seen very much in this industry is that the production of virgin fibers might not be true 30 years from now. Instead, we might move towards a world where we're only using the resources that we have today. And we're looking at really closing that loop on circularity.
Strong answer. I want to move to you next, Beza. You've developed a solution that addresses a very practical manufacturing challenge. From your perspective, what is the biggest barrier preventing brands, mills, and manufacturers from adopting innovation more quickly, and what needs to change?
I believe it's not the biggest barrier is not the cost, or it's not the lack of innovations. There's a lot of innovations in our industry. The main barrier is the friction between innovation and implementation, because every new solution, no matter how good it is, asks people to change something, a process, a habit, a relationship, a KPI, or something. For our case, it's, decades-long habit of using pumice, changing into using HMS, for example. And it's difficult to convince people if the implementation becomes difficult too. And the manufacturers and brands are already under pressure because of pricing, lead times, compliance requirements, and everything. So when an innovation is objectively better, even when it's so much better, people often choose the familiar option because it's safer and just easier. So one of the most important lessons I've learned traveling around and seeing all of the factories and how they look at innovations is that we need to focus on not only the value the innovations create, but also reducing the friction of adoption, like making it easier for them to test and giving them training and reducing the operational risks as much as possible, so that they can see the results as quickly as possible. For example, at HMS, we found that adoption happens fastest when our product is practicable and the results are measurable and we are always there for our customers, and we give them recipes, we go there with our technicians, and we reduce the friction as much as possible. So it's not only about putting a really good innovation out there, but also making it as easy as possible for them to adopt.
Yeah, I think you make a really strong point, Besa. I think when something is easy, convenient, we adopt it a lot quicker. But if it looks complicated, we put it back down and go back to what we're used to. So I think that giving them the opportunity to not only understand it, but also use it in a very kind of easy, simple way that doesn't make them having to relearn a whole new concept process would get people adopting it a lot faster. So I want to talk about responsibility a little bit. Who do you think should take more responsibility when it comes to scaling innovation? I had this question for Besa, but I'm actually thinking it applies to all of you, because I think accountability is something that is very much lacking in the industry. So who should take more responsibility for scaling innovation? Brands, suppliers, investors, or technology providers? In your opinion, especially you, Chelsea, from a designer, who should take it? You, Lisa, working with manufacturer, who should be responsible for scaling innovation? And you, Besa, as somebody who works in innovation, who do you think should be held responsible? So you all kind of can give an answer from your perspectives, I think.
I think this is a great question, Regina. Sorry, Besa. But I think a lot about the responsibility of the role of design and how design makes a lot of decisions. Design is essentially a series of decisions that are made throughout a process that results in an end product, informed by, of course, a brief. And I think design decides between one material versus another. And of course, there are many things in that decision, such as cost, performance, quality, whether or not it's testing to the standard that is set by the brand or the team, and the consumer's expectations of that as well, right? But design still is the deciding factor in a lot of organizations. And I think when you can have design advocating for these new technologies and for this change, it can be a very powerful force. However, where we lose trust is when materials maybe aren't ready for commercialization and they're pushed into these product development cycles when they're not quite tested and proven. And I think that's where it's really around building trust within product teams through delivering consistently as an innovator, where you're able to really justify the investment and the risk associated to developing something new. Because within a brand cycle, you're moving so quickly that you need to be able to be quite... It's a brand managing risk, essentially, and you need to be quite sure that something will execute so that you're able to deliver the commercial need that you're trying to meet with the brief. And when you're trying to adopt new innovation that's not proven, this is where it becomes very challenging. So I think your question is actually, in my eyes, one, it's yes about responsibility, but also about how you manage the risk and who takes on the risk within this process. Is it the innovator? Is it the brand? Is it a combination? And how do you share that associated risk across everyone who's involved in that product creation process?
What do you think, Lisa, from a manufacturer's perspective? Because I do feel like a lot of manufacturers are the ones who have to take the risk so they can retain their clients.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a value chain perspective, there's actually some really cool stuff going on already in the value chain that actually, if retailers understood how amazing the value chain and how good they are at innovating and investment, they could actually plug and play into it. I actually do think, I'm going to go one further and say not just brands, but big brands should have the responsibility of really pushing innovation, because when you have that kind of power in your supply chain, if you're manufacturing in a country and you're taking up a large percentage, you've got leverage to get your supply chain to act quite quickly. I work really closely with innovators for several years now. And what I can see is actually there is proof of concept. There is innovators that have proved that at scale, there is parity at price, with lower impact. And so it's not always about cost, but what I would say is it's about those longer term strategies. I've had several pilots where it was like, right, okay, we'll get this over the line. We got some amazing data. We proved that, at scale it's workable. We proved it was going to be lower price. And then there's complete management changes at a brand level or a buyer changes. And so then your project that you think you're on this path to, okay, we're going to make a big impact here, there, it just gets canned overnight. And so again, it's that kind of buyer-led mentality that we live in, that actually we're not able to make those 2, 3, 4, 5, 10-year commitments. And I think that's where these big brands actually need to come in and build that into their long-term strategies. And not only that, they have to build it into their buyers' KPIs, that buyers don't only have a margin KPI, but they have a, sustainability innovation KPI or an impact KPI, whatever it might be, because ultimately, unless you're being targeted to do that, then that change isn't going to happen. The other thing that I would say is that actually where the investment's coming into play as well. If the brands made those commitments, then the banks and the investors would also, not feel as nervous about investing in those innovations and helping them to scale, because I think there is a lot of nervousness around, we saw Renewcell go under, obviously, and that was such a big name. And there was so many other innovators in that next gen fibre innovation arena that actually their investments got pulled back, and they weren't delivering the same product. Some of them were delivering a more superior product, but that nervousness in the market was there also. So I would say big brands and an investment would be the key. And, the supply chain will pivot to whatever the needs of the customer are.
And I'm going to add this actually. And Beza, I would love to know if you agree with me. Would you all think that responsibility falls on the industry as a whole? Because when an industry works together to solve one problem, then everyone benefits from, I don't know, if you look at the sports industry as an example, or the car industry, trying to solve the electric car thing and see whether they can all kind of pitch in and be part of that change. Would you agree, Beza, that it might be more the industry that has the responsibility as a whole rather than one specific area? There's enough to go around, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. In order to scale innovation, the entire value chain in an industry needs to be held responsible. And what I've seen is that there's a lot of good initiatives from, all of the stakeholders, from brands to manufacturers to innovators. But I personally see a little bit of more of a responsibility being placed on the innovators and manufacturers, because innovators, first of all, invest for years and years to, create that thing with no returns. And then there's the certifications that are super expensive. And then there are just a myriad of different types of certifications. And then once an innovation gets to a point where it can be tested, manufacturers are often expected to be the testing ground for it. They take operational risk, dedicate machine time, they train teams and invest resources. However, when it comes to rewards, whether that's consumer perception or ESG reporting or brand differentiation, this is captured further downstream. So there should be more of a balance there, I think. So in order to create more of a balance there, when it comes to, responsibility versus rewards, I think we should talk a little bit about incentives as a solution. And it doesn't have to be a financial incentive. It can be for example, a long-term commitment from a brand, or preferred supplier status, or co-investment in pilots, or shared marketing opportunities for their manufacturers that are adopting innovations. That's what I think.
I mean, I think we all have enough of those store cards that give us an incentive to download that app and, collect those points so we get something off. So I think that idea of incentives for brands, for businesses, would make them think to themselves, oh, maybe we should do this. Maybe if I get a tax break, if I invest in more innovation for the industry or anything along those lines. I think you're onto something there. I noticed that we are running out of time, but I do really want to ask this question. And I really want you to know your answers. So I'm going to squeeze it in. What's one belief in our industry that still holds? So what's still holding that you think will be completely wrong in 10 years from now? So what's one belief our industry still holds that you think will be completely obsolete 10 years from now? What are we doing?
Shall I go first?
Please,
Shall I go
start.
first?
Yes, bearing in mind we've got 4 minutes.
For me, I hope, you know, in an ideal world, I would really hope that we stop working in a linear business model, and in 10 years' time, everyone is well on the way of working in the circular economy, with proof that actually it's more valuable and more profitable than the linear economy. For me, that would be the thing that I really hope we do leave behind. We keep, you know, our valuable raw materials in circulation for as long as possible. We go back to how our grandparents used to repair and hold on to their garments, and, you know, have that emotional durability that's needed with clothes, because let's face it, there's a lot of work that goes into designing, manufacturing, you know, the artisans that make these products, that we should be holding on to them for a lot longer.
I like the idea of respecting your clothes. I think we've lost respect for our garments. What do you think, Chelsea?
Yes, I mean, I love this idea of the consumer as a custodian of product and their role of kind of taking care of it. This is an idea that came out of the Textile Circularity Center, so I must credit them. But I think it's very true in terms of what a future consumer looks like. 10 years from now in the industry, what I would like to see, and to build on what Lisa said as well, I think what I would like, and this might be more like 20 years from now, but that we no longer use virgin fossil fuel fibers. I think this is a direction that I think is very, very feasible with some of the incredible recycling technologies that I see today. And we have so much product in circulation that I know we have enough feedstock to continue to supply this industry. So I'm very hopeful that we will no longer be making virgin petroleum fibers. That's something I'd wish for 10 years from now.
Okay, what about you, Beza? What are your thoughts?
A belief that we hold on to right now that will be obsolete in 10 years, I believe, will be the fact that sustainability is a choice. I don't think it's a choice. It's not a nice to have. Our resources are scarce, and that's just an objective truth. And sustainability is not just a nice to have. And in 10 years, I think it's going to become apparent that everyone needs to produce sustainably to exist. So, yeah, that's what I believe.
And you know what? I'm going to add my 2 cents to this. I would love for the industry to stop having a fling with collaborations, put a ring on it, and actually commit to it. So that way we can always utter the word collaboration, but let it be truly a collaborative effort that is long-term, like my parents' marriage. But thank you so much, ladies. And I hope to see you all at Munich Fabric Start. I will pass it on to Sophia now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mucinetta. We do have a couple of questions. I saw a hand raised from Panos, and we have a question from Christine just before we wrap up. And I'll put it in the chat as well, a link to register for free to Munich Fabric Start's event in July. You must come along. Mucinetta, as I mentioned earlier, will be leading the discussions and the stage program, just exploring these themes in much more detail with lots of amazing speakers and intimate formats as well, where you can really get stuck into these conversations and try and understand what it means for your business. So I really urge you, if you're not registered, do make the trip. And it's Munich in July, and it's a 30-year anniversary. It's going to be fun. So just on that note, going back to Christine's question, I love and totally agree to what Beza said about the impact of quality. Consumers are looking for quality. What's the panel's thoughts about this? Is it fabrics? Is it materials? Is it workmanship, etc.? How would you define it? How would you define quality?
I can jump in here from my perspective. I think we haven't spoken about in this conversation the notion of longevity and durability as a part of the sustainability story. And I think this is a very important kind of design parameter to set when you are looking at designing sustainable product. And to answer your question around quality, I think it's very much focused on these principles of longevity and durability. So looking at how a product performs throughout its life. And if a product is designed to have an end-of-life pathway, it's designed to be circular. I think there are products within all of our wardrobes that are meant to be consumed that we might refresh. Our socks, for example, or things that we might not have for multiple decades, 30 years from now. And with that, are we considering the full life cycle of those types of consumable products that sit within this textile and apparel industry? And then on a more collector side, in terms of those products that we might have inherited or might be looking at even buying secondhand that were very much designed 30 plus years ago, I think there is a level of longevity within both design and aesthetics in terms of the timelessness of something, as well as the actual integrity of the construction of the product. So the craftsmanship, absolutely, but the materiality as well. If you are designing something that is meant to last for generations, ensure that the material choice allows for that. And I think this level of kind of longevity and durability within the thinking of product creation is really relevant to quality. And at the end of the day, you are consuming a product, not a textile, right? They are very tethered, of course, but you experience it as a consumer through the lens of a product. So how does that product really serve you throughout your life and its life, if it might be longer?
Great answer. Is there anyone, Lisa, would you like to add, Mucinetta or Beza?
Yeah. I have to completely agree with Chelsea on the point on longevity. You know, the best thing that we could do is keep these garments in use for longer. That is going to be the biggest carbon saving. And ultimately, when we talk about sustainability, it's with the view of keeping the temperature down on our planet. And so the best carbon saving that we can make is keeping those garments in work for much longer. For me, when I talk about circular design, it's not just about, you know, a designer sitting and sketching. It's about making better decisions at every point of the value chain. So whether it's, you know, inputting really fantastic regenerative cotton, whether it's the dyeing and finishing, whether it's, you know, using a solar panelled factory that's recycling rainwater, you know, all of those things to me goes into making it a quality garment. I think I touched on it and you know, one of the previous questions as well, that emotional durability that we have to our garments. I think there has to be a bit of a consumer mindset shift, you know, how we consume products. It's very, you know, even in the secondhand market, we're consuming like it's, you know, it's like that disposable fashion. And so I think we have to build into our products something that really captures that emotional aspect of why a customer would want to look after it better, rather than having this sort of throwaway discussion that you would just wear it a few times and it goes to the charity or it goes in the bin. So I completely agree. Longevity is the key.
But I honestly think like longevity really works if the product is good. Because if everyone's buying from much more fast fashion brands where a t-shirt lasts only 5 washes, then the chances are that they won't have the opportunity to respect and learn to look after their clothes. I think we need to put a lot of pressure on brands to create products with better textiles, not cut corners. And if it ends up costing a little bit more to the consumer, then at least, you know, we know that that product can be passed on and worn on. Just the way I used to when I was younger. My sister wore all my clothes and my brother wore my sister's jumpers and whatnot, because the quality of the clothes allowed for that to happen. So how can we allow for that to happen? Brands need to play a role in that. And I'm looking forward to legislations also pushing brands to, you know, to use better quality materials when they're producing their products, putting that pressure on.
Thank you. And Panos, I saw that you have your hand raised. Would you like to unmute and ask your question? Oh, I think, let me see if I can, you need to unmute.
Do you hear me now?
We can
Yes,
hear
we hear you
you.
now.
Okay, so hello, everybody.
Hello.
I'm so sorry that I didn't have the opportunity to watch this fabulous meeting from the beginning, but as far as I see, I'm totally covered by you. We had to do with at least 6, 7 geniuses that really have predicted something true and so clear, that the future is first of all, it's hard to predict, because we are living on an accumulated hill that is containing a lot of unpredictable things. But as a traditional fan of comics, I would say that let us see the material. We have already watched TV series like Silo. Silo, for me, is, I don't know if you have seen it, It is talking about the reuse of things, and it's talking about longevity. It is talking about, let's say, functionality. We have also seen some movies like Star Trek. We have seen other things that we have not seen any icons that had to do with the ones we have been expecting. I mean, about the clothing that we're going to use. Mm. I have a feeling that the future will be totally different from what we are imagining, but at least it's going to contain a lot of things that you have mentioned already. It's about functionality. I think there won't be any fashion anymore unless we will be occupied by Shane and Temu. And if it's something that we have to let's say what is good, it's that the community, humanity will finally understand what is priority, because the days that are coming are very unpredictable, and somehow this topic. So resilience is the name of the next, let's say, way of living. And I think that from now on, the young generation is going to somehow pay our mistakes for our mistakes. Every new incoming generation is paying for the mistakes of the previous ones. But my opinion is that we will be capable to face at the end. And Muchaneta, do you permit me to say a few words about our show?
Please feel free to do so.
Yeah, because I don't have so much time left. I had to postpone my other meeting. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's a crucial event. 30 years are not so, let's say, few. We did a lot in the past. I used to be a customer of Munich Fabric Starts, so my commission was to be part of it because I enjoyed so many different things as I had with other shows. I have been impressed by the professionality and the perfectionism that those guys have. I suppose you will agree with me that there is no show on earth that has been organized so well. Our, let's say, disadvantage should be that we're not based in Paris or in Milan. But I'm sure that we have a lot of things to show, because Germans are famous for their, let's say, for their focusing on things. The market seems to react, even in Germany. By the latest agreements we have from Mr. Trump, I think that things will change a little bit. On the other hand, we will be very happy to host you all there and share with you the newness and all the novelties we have. I am apparently representing also the EU Cotton Alliance, which is something so amazing. We're trying to bring back activities in the continent, something that I suppose you understand that reshoring and nearshoring is the key to survival. We're very friendly with countries that are around the neighborhood, and we show that. But on the other, we wish to, let's say, to support all the efforts that the European community is doing on that. This is my conclusion. Thank you so much for your courage and kindness to hear my words. And I have to send you my best regards and waiting you to see in July next 14th and 16th of month.
Thank you, Panos. Thank you so much. And just a reminder, there is a link again in the chat for anyone that's not registered to come along to the 30-year celebration at Munich Fabric Start. We're running out of time. Ingrid, and I saw your hand up and I saw that you had a question about retail spaces, which is a fabulous question, but probably not, we probably haven't got enough time to answer it because it is going into a different realm to this discussion. But thank you so much for posting it. Yeah. Did you want to quickly add something now?
Yes, I don't expect an answer from you now, because I know it's not the correct platform, but I think both are super connected, because on the other hand, we have a lot of innovation, material resources, suppliers are doing a lot. There is a lot of things going on with legislation, with digital passport, with getting blue sign certifications, Ecotex, blah, 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 blah. So on the other hand, we have informed customers, empty sales spaces. So I think there must be a link somewhere in future to drive sales, to make people want to buy. And yeah, I just thought it's an important point to post here. And yeah, since you are a lot of in all these types of innovation, I just want to leave you with this question without answer here. So.
Thank you, Ingrid. No, it's a really important question and thought, and maybe it's something that we could address in another webinar or another leadership piece that we can post, or anything like that, another conversation. But I just want to thank everyone for joining again today. Thank you for listening, and especially thanks to Munich Fabric Start for co-hosting this with us today. And of course, Chelsea, Lisa, Beza, and Muchinetta, who's shaped this conversation. Thank you for your intelligent insights and time that's gone into this webinar. We really appreciate it. We will be sharing a replay and also an overview of everything that was discussed. So do look out for that. If you're signed up to Munich Fabric Start newsletter, you'll receive that automatically. If you haven't, please do. And we'll make sure that you receive a copy of everything. Thank you so much. We'll see you in July, we hope.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.